South Africa. Welcome to Sunday Live here on SABC1. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala. As you know, I never fly solo.
You don't fly solo, indeed. Kupna kuphi like finyelela khona Sunday Live. Ngenamkela, I'm your host, Umxolisi Wagwamasango. Namhlanje kusihlwa sikhuluma ngodaba that has taken over social media during the course of this week. Sikhuluma nge-racism ey'koleni.
Of course, Mkolisi, as we know, social media, like Mkolisi just said, went ablaze after protest over the alleged racist policies, at Pretoria High School for girls. A video posted on Instagram shows 13-year-old Zuleika Patel and her fellow schoolmates taking part in an anti-racism protest. Since then, other schools in the country have been seeing similar protests or demonstrations. Gauteng MEC Banyaza Lusifi visited Pretoria High School for girls and has since suspended the code of conduct that refers to the strict set of rules around hairstyles.
To come out and say this is just a policy about straightening hair, but then you have people who'd also say, listen here, this is about molding people and teaching to people to rather work in a set of rules. That's why we're asking you this all-important question this evening, and our poll question this evening is, are these school rules and codes preserving white standards at the expense of black identity? We are Yasmos, you know the drill by now. Check us out on Facebook as Sunday Live SABC1. We're also on Twitter, right? As @Sunday Live SABC1. Wenzenjalo.
And of course, we're going to be involving our studio audience in this very important topic around racism in our schools. And of course, within our audience, we're going to be joined by students from various high schools in Johannesburg. Mkolisi?
On the couch, Jackie Esnabo, namhlanje kusihlwa kuzoxoxisana nathi siphethe the Gauteng education spokesperson uMnumzane Obabudibe kanye noSisi uNozipho Wakampanza, who is a journalist. A very good evening. Sithokoze ukuba namhlanje ku Sunday Live.
Good evening, thank you.
Well, let's get straight into it, Mnumzane Obudibe. I mean, your department has had a very busy week, first of all. I mean, you've been putting out fires, ngapha nangapha. Please take us through some of the challenges that the girls said they were facing, first of all, at the Pretoria Girls for High School. Mhlambe uzusinike nezisombululo briefly some of the, resolutions that were taken.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation. The problem that I think we're dealing with is a situation where you have a multicultural school environment, but the school code of conduct seems to impose one set of rules or one standard, and many of the other students have to fit into that standard. That is the perception that is there. And the general complaints are about victimization, they are about verbal abuse, they're about many months of tolerating what is unacceptable behavior on the part of the students. It's also about feeling that officialdom has failed us because they've spoken to the teachers, they've spoken to the parents, and they didn't get any solution from there. And that's why eventually they decided to take a protest. And let me just say, I mean, all of us would agree that, we will all agree that there has to be some rules, there has to be discipline, students must be presentable. But that's where agreement ends.
Indeed.
But what does it mean in a multicultural setting? And the school code of conduct, on the face of it, seems to be accommodative. But it says all manner of hairstyles are acceptable up to a certain length. But now, if you say there's a length restriction, there are some hairstyles that are natural, and the girls look beautiful in those hairstyles, but they won't pass the length.
But there were certain, bizarre allegations that, came into light. I mean, these children some of them were very emotional, coming out to say, the school pupils were made to sit in racial groups. Abanye babo were not even allowed to speak in their local languages. And you're speaking about diversity at this point.
And that's a problem. I think we can all accept that in the classroom, there can be one common language that is spoken, but you can't then impose a standard that says outside of the classroom people must not speak in their own language. I mean, that's against our constitution, which recognizes all 11 languages. But it also reflects that the educators themselves are not making the time to learn African languages. The white learners themselves are not making the time to learn African languages. And so African learners are being forced, or black learners in general, are being forced then to converse in English for the convenience of the other people, and I think that's not fair.
So before we bring in Usisi Nozipo into the conversation, but Opa, did you get the sense throughout your interaction during the week, Uguti, you felt, Uguti, these schools were actually, in a way, preserving white standards at the expense of, a black identity, as we asked this evening on our poll question?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer at face value, and that's why we decided let's have an investigation. Because on the face of it, the school leaderships claim they are maintaining discipline. But it's clear that some of the educators have attitudinal problems because they're overzealous. They bring in their very worst in how they speak to the students. And I think it's unacceptable for any parent to speak to a child in that language, to say, you look like a monkey, you look like you have a nest on your hair. I mean, there are ways of disciplining a child without destroying their self-esteem and self-confidence. Doesn't matter whether that child is black or white. And that's where we draw the line. And I think we won't tolerate victimization. And two, this is a school. It's an environment where you have to nurture the minds and to make sure that people develop intellectually. And you can't be so restrictive that it becomes a repressive environment.
I see you nodding there, Nozipo. Sisi, I mean, what seemingly started as just a debate about Inwele, opened a whole can of worms. It's seemingly also, from what we've been seeing on our Facebook page, it's reflective of a greater problem in society.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think there's a lot of issues that come into play as we look at this, but I think to highlight just a few, we have, on one hand, we have black students in these schools frustrated at the way their blackness has been received, or so to speak, and has been treated, and terming that as institutionalized racism. And that really speaks into limiting factors. Really constructs that have presented blackness as a limiting factor in the environment that they occupy on a daily basis for about 8 hours. And then on the other hand, you really have the sense that, on the backs of all these protests and everything that has come up, the conversation has opened up with Fees Must Fall, it's opened up with Black Lives Matter, everything has kind of come up. And so you find that the conversation is opening up and they're coming on the backs of one another. So they're not existing in silos, everything is not just an independent conversation that's happening. Everybody's been able to open their minds and really join the conversation at this point.
Absolutely. That's why I think we need to bring in Ujeki, who's on standby with reaction from our studio audience with, this very pressing topic. Jackie?
Yeah, this topic definitely is hot, and I'd really would love to hear what the audience has to say about this. Norman, let me start with you. You've heard our panelists talking about the fact that it's constitutional, it's discriminatory. What is your take? You're wearing your natural hair. What's your feel around this topic?
People don't realize, and I say people, and I'm referring to the white people in general, they don't realize that as black kids going to so-called white schools, interracial schools, we have a hard time already just getting in there. So now you're telling me that my hair is unacceptable? It's not correct. It's not correct, because you're then telling me that I need to be what you deem beautiful, what you deem acceptable. What makes you think that it's okay for you to tell me what I should be? That's how I feel about that.
And I want to find out from you. I mean, Zuleka Patel seems to be the face of the struggle around hair and racism and identity. And for you, what is your take around her and what she represents, especially around this topic that we're talking about today?
I think it's very interesting that it actually took place right at the end of Women's Month, because what she did is what those women did so many years ago. She stands for everything that we as women should stand for. Don't let somebody put you down. I think it is racist for you to tell a child that, she looks like a monkey just because what you think is inappropriate doesn't suit you. What she did was absolutely, in my opinion, it's courageous. As a child, to stand up and say, I will not sit down and tell you to tell me how to be a black person. And of course, let me just say, nobody can ever tell you how to feel unless you allow them to. And she told them that I will not go down without a fight.
Wow. Thank you for that, Noma. So one lady basically saying she's not going to go down with a fight. She's going to fight it all the way. Mopohedi, we'll be back right after this. More on Sunday Live. If you just joined us, welcome to Sunday Live here on SABC 1. Today we are speaking about racism in our schools. And our poll question for today is, are these school rules and codes preserving white standards at the expense of black identity? We're definitely now going to get our take, at least the insight that is coming from our studio audience. I think I want to start from up top with some of the students here. Let's talk about what is your take on this topic. Have you experienced any racism in your school?
Well, personally at my school, no, I have not. But I think the problem is in South Africa, racism has become a boundary that we have failed to transcend. And if we look at this whole Pretoria Girls High thing, if the school's code of conduct is that your hair has to be neat and presentable, then unfortunately she has to follow that policy. Because we believe that I am my most best self when I am my most authentic. And as a black girl, your hair represents you. But unfortunately, when you enter that school gate, you are forced to abide by the school's rules. And the school rules are you have to be neat and presentable. And unfortunately, that is what you have to do. That has nothing to do with racism.
Okay. So there's a point at which you sort of have to stop being yourself. Is that what we're saying? Let me bring it to you. What is your take? I mean, you heard what she just said now.
Okay, ngizokhuluma nje nami njengomfundi ngiyayizwa into ayikhulumayo ukuthi mawuqala ungena esikoleni imele ulandeleke imigomo yakhona. Siqaleni la leyo mgomo leyo ibekwe ngibani? Kungani leyo mgomo leyo mele icindezele thina at the end of the day? Ngoba manje yithi ekunenkinga nenwele zakhona bona banankinga nenwele zabo ze right. And another thing ukuthi leyo mthetho loyo ukuthi u right or kenzakalani. Leso sikolo sise South Africa and South Africa is democratic. So whatever rules abawenzayo mele accommodate everyone. Not just umuntu omnyama okuyenzakalani. And another thing, ekoleni racism isasekhona and angeke iziphele right now. Akusiyo into ukuthi ivela manje ukuthi mhlawumbe abantwana bafuna ukufunda ba lazy because ama comments esiwatholayo ukuthi abasafuna ukuya esikoleni abantwana babhizi bafuna ukustrike abatoyitoy benzeni. Akusimnandi kuba sesikoleni ucindezeleke. Akukho mnandi. I'm a student evet ngazi kahle into ezakalayo lapha. Most of the time umlungu ubonakala superior than wena. Even umlungu ekhuliswa kubo indlela mentality abamnika yona ukuthi yena vele usuperior. Nawe mawuqala ukhula ufundiswa vele ukuthi mele unjalo ube like ube ngaphansi komlungu okuthi into engekho right ekumele ukuthi ichange because iapartheid vele ngathi sasekhona and akakazi ukuphela so mele silwe nayo lento le.
Okay, so it's really about fighting it. Discrimination and racism is still here. Let me take it to our gentleman here. Just take it from here.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, peace and kitty. Firstly, I will. The only thing that I can say about this racism thing, for us black students, I think it is a mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without accepting it. If you find out Uguti, if I am the one or promoter racism and every student uzo landel, which means the whole school is corrupt. Achievement has no color. That's what I believe in too.
So we had an interesting take here where one of the students was saying it really is just about discipline. I want to take it back to you. You were saying it really is about discipline. It has nothing to do with racism.
Well, basically, what they were talking about, the principal stated a rule. He followed protocol. He warned the child, gave a disciplinary action about her hair. He's a superior. He's the principal. He was not being racist. He was just following simple protocol, telling her that the way her hair is done is wrong. Just because he's a white man, it's taken in a turn of racism. This was just a person of superior actor in school, not in terms of racial status, just as the principal in school. So this issue shouldn't be taken as a racism act. It's just simply following protocol.
Thank you. Mxolisi, I'm just going to throw it back to you. Please, I mean, you've heard some of the comments that our studio audience are talking about today. What does your panel have to say about it?
Thanks very much indeed for that, Jackie. Well, I'm going to take it straight to you, but Opa, I mean, umzwile nomuntu omusha le uthi yena, the very same rules that, were meant to protect you in a school environment are now oppressing you. How do we make sure that there is a way for bona abantu abasha ukuthi nabo babambe iqhaza phela when we draft these rules? What's your reaction to what we've been hearing?
Thank you. I mean, formally, students have supposed to be represented by the RCL in the SGB. So that's the way in which they make their input into the school policy. And that's quite right. The law allows for participation by learners, by parents, by educators in the making up of a school policy. So but a school policy unfortunately can't stay static. And the problem is that some of these rules were made a while back and they've been incrementally changed, but stopped. So you need to constantly have a conversation, because if there's one thing that happens, youth culture evolves, regardless whether you are black or white. And if you are a school, you need to accommodate that. And let's just say this issue is not just confined to only what we call former Model C schools. Even in township schools, the schools find it difficult to deal with diversity. We've had instances of educators telling children, telling them dreadlocks are not acceptable. And the Human Rights Commission had to say, no, you need to allow people who are Rastafarians to wear their hair as permitted by their religion. So we've got a bigger problem of managing diversity.
And of course, we continue on this very pressing issue, and plus there's more of your studio reaction straight after this. Stay with us.
If you just joined us, rather, you are watching Sunday Live here on SABC 1. We're speaking about the also contentious issue of racism in our schools. And we know really at the heart of this issue is the issue, I guess, of the SGBs, the parents in this mix. And luckily for us, we do have a parent in studio with us. And I think I'd like to hear what she has to say about this. Mama, SGBs are at the heart of this in terms of the involvement in the codes and the conduct around the policies around here. What is your take as a parent?
Enkosi kakhulu, Jackie. As a parent, as a teacher, and as a TLO, as Ubaba Opa has said, that the school needs to have the school rules or the school code of conduct, the school policy, of which zonke ama stakeholders need to take part. My drafter. So, as students, there's no way they can say that abamelwanga school policy, because they are there as the RCL. Abazali are there to adhere to the policy that is into ebezisayinile ebezivumile ziyenzeka esikolweni. So as eForest High School, we say no to racism, but at the same time we abide by the school rules as long as sikhona sizi stakeholders besihleli sonke, the parents, the teachers, and the RCL emela abantwana besikolo siyahlala phansi senza ipolicy, and then we abide by it.
But I guess the question is, are the school rules in with the time? Are they evolving with how this country is changing?
Yes, I currently have a problem with the fact that we currently had the name changings, which means that Pretoria is supposed to be known as Tshwane currently. But then why do we have Pretoria Girls High in Tshwane right now? Why do we still have University of Pretoria in Tshwane? If this is really the way that we're changing things, I think it's really not working. We need to decolonize the whole system curriculum. It's not working for us. It's clearly not working for us, and we need to do something very quickly.
Clicks in the studio. I would like to find out from you how you feel about your hair. What does your hair mean to you?
It's not an animal, because people tell you all the time, tame your hair. Relax your hair, put your hair away. It's not an animal. It does what its genetic code tells it to do. And I don't agree with people telling me to wear my hair a certain way. I have nothing against people relaxing their hair or weaves or whatever, it's fine. It's your choice. But don't tell me that the way I wear my hair in its natural state is not on. Don't tell me that.
Well, Mxolisi uzwile. You know, she said it's her natural hair. This is how it comes out of her head. And I'd just like to find out from your panelists, I mean, how do we get to a point where we are seeing the change that we want to see in this country, especially when it comes to policies around hair and issues of race?
Wejeki, kwanzima impela. I'm going to take this to you, Sis Nozipho. Just quickly, we have a few more seconds. I just want to know from you, this debate has been going on for over 20 years now. How does this move from being an intellectual conversation about inwele to something that translates to inhliziyo zabazali ekhaya, to say that mntanam, it's fine not to look like Beyonce, it's fine to be ududuzile, it's fine to be ntomgayise?
I think the schools, Abazali and the schools, will have to work together and really driving that different perspective, that different mindset. It's important for schools especially to take an active approach to how they look at the things like the governing bodies, the codes of conduct, you know, the laws. And parents can do so much in their homes in affirming their children. But we can't have this kind of passive progression where people react and then only, you know, we only get scared of what's going on. It's important that schools are very, very active in interrogating what's going on. And then it's also, we should remember that codes of conduct are rules, and rules are only relevant to the societies which they exist in. And so when societies change, then laws should also change.
Indeed, they must be up with the times, absolutely.
Exactly.
Now, but Opa, your final closing comments on this particular matter. I mean, Sibungaza, you know, inyanga yamagugu, that's Heritage Month. How do we promote diversity ey'koleni zethu, you know, to ensure that we sing from the same hymn book, njengabazali, njengomphakathi, njengotishala? How do we, you know, get to a point la sikwazi ukubuyisana khona njengesizwe? Just a quick one.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's all accept black people also have a standards of beauty. They also have we also have a standard of what is neat, and that must be accommodated. And it's not about lawlessness and lack of rules. It's about a multicultural society that understands the nuances of beauty in that multicultural society.
Indeed, thanks very much. Waibega Waisho but Opa, that's the Gauteng education spokesperson, Nomzane Opa Budibe, as well as Usisu Nozipho Wagampanza, who is a journalist. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Of course, that has been it for this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. From me, Mxolisi Masango, and the team, Baloga Sunday Live, Elhamba Pambili City. Good night and have a spectacular evening going forward. Take care. Jackie.
From me and my studio audience, I think we've given you a lot of food for thought. Adios, muchachos. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.